In the historic city of Gyeongju, the birthplace of Korea's ancient Silla civilization, motorcades cut through streets lined with fluttering national flags. This quiet city of temples and tombs now hosts the world's most powerful leaders, gathered under the banner of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit, APEC 2025. The air carries both ceremony and strain. For decades, APEC has symbolized open markets and shared growth. Today, it faces a world divided by mistrust, disrupted supply chains, and the weight of artificial intelligence reshaping industries at lightning speed. Inside the main conference hall, cameras flash as delegations take their seats. South Korean President Lee Jae Myung, host of this year's summit, moves through a sea of microphones and aides. He pauses to greet Kristalina Georgieva, the managing director of the International Monetary Fund. Their brief exchange, polite yet intent, captures the central theme of this year's meeting: economic stability in an era of profound technological and political change. Across the room, Chinese President Xi Jinping confers quietly with Vietnam's head of state, Luong Quang. Their conversation, cordial but deliberate, reflects Beijing's renewed emphasis on regional diplomacy after months of trade friction and supply chain realignments. Japan's new Prime Minister, Sanae Takaichi, adjusts her notes, preparing for her first appearance at the APEC Leaders' Roundtable, a historic moment as she becomes the first woman in Japanese history to attend the summit in that capacity. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent reviews papers, his team beside him, his presence underlining Washington's push to stabilize global trade while recalibrating its tariff strategy with both China and Southeast Asia. Nearby, Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney, a former central banker, exchanges words with aides, a reminder of his focus on financial sustainability and carbon-neutral growth. The hum of multilingual conversation fills the hall, a ritual of diplomacy before the cameras roll and the speeches begin. As the leaders take their assigned seats under the APEC emblem, President Lee rises to open the session. He speaks with measured confidence, addressing the deep uncertainty in today's economy. As the free trade order faces drastic changes and uncertainty in the global economy deepens, the momentum for trade and investment is weakening, he says. His words echo across the chamber, both a warning and a call to action. Lee continues, the technological revolution represented by artificial intelligence presents us with an unprecedented crisis and at the same time, an unprecedented set of opportunities. The remark resonates far beyond the room. In just 2 sentences, the South Korean president summarizes the dilemma confronting every leader present: how to harness the power of AI and automation without tearing apart jobs, trust, and social cohesion. Behind him, the screens display digital charts, trade data, growth forecasts, and AI-driven projections of productivity. The contrast is stark: optimism in numbers, anxiety in reality. President Lee Jae Myung continues, stressing cooperation. I believe that the path that APEC has followed so far holds the answers to overcoming the current crisis. Cooperation and solidarity are the surest ways to lead us towards a better future. It's a message deliberately echoing the founding ideals of APEC, formed in 1989 to promote open trade and regional integration. The applause that follows is brief but genuine. Around the table, leaders nod in quiet agreement. Xi Jinping, composed and analytical, takes notes. For China, APEC 2025 comes at a crucial time. Its domestic economy faces headwinds, yet its regional ambitions remain strong. Sources close to Beijing describe Xi's focus here as twofold: to reaffirm China's commitment to free trade within Asia and to counter growing narratives of economic decoupling. The Chinese delegation's body language reflects discipline: no gestures wasted, every exchange recorded. Japan's Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi enters the discussion next. Her tone is firm yet diplomatic. She emphasizes stability through technology, urging APEC nations to agree on shared ethical standards for AI. Her aides highlight Japan's leadership in robotics and advanced chips, a quiet signal to both Seoul and Washington that Tokyo intends to lead, not follow, in the next industrial revolution. The symbolism of her presence alongside Lee Jae Myung, 2 East Asian neighbors often divided by history but united today by mutual economic interest, is unmistakable. The camera pans to President Xi Jinping once again as he leans forward slightly, conferring with his economic advisor before addressing the assembly. While his full remarks are yet to be released in detail, Sources describe his intervention as pragmatic, emphasizing digital sovereignty, the role of the global south in trade diversification, and China's commitment to inclusive innovation. In the audience, IMF Chief Georgieva listens attentively, aware that global debt distress and technological inequality now form the twin crises of the post-pandemic era. To one side of the room, Taiwan's representative Lin Xini sits quietly, acknowledging the complexity of being part of an economic forum that also includes mainland China. For decades, APEC has been one of the few arenas where both can participate under the same banner, a subtle diplomatic dance that continues even amid rising cross-strait tensions. The camera lingers briefly on Lin, a reminder that every handshake here carries layers of geopolitics. As the first session proceeds, the conversation broadens. Climate financing, digital infrastructure, and AI governance dominate the agenda. The South Korean hosts project images of solar panels, wind corridors, and semiconductor facilities, visual proof of how innovation now defines economic resilience. Delegates from Indonesia and the Philippines emphasize the need for inclusive growth, warning that widening digital divides could trigger new forms of inequality across the Asia-Pacific. Outside the conference hall, in the media center filled with hundreds of reporters, screens replay key soundbites. Analysts describe Lee Jae Myung's remarks as a pivot moment, positioning South Korea not merely as a host, but as a moral compass within the Pacific community. Local commentators note how his language mirrors domestic concerns, youth unemployment, rising energy costs, and Korea's own debate over AI regulation. For viewers at home, the image of their president standing beside Xi, Takaichi, and Carney signals maturity, a Korea confident enough to mediate rather than merely observe. Back in the main hall, bilateral meetings unfold quietly on the sidelines. Xi Jinping meets briefly with Mexico's Secretary of Economy, Marcelo Ebrard, discussing trade corridors and logistics. Sanae Takaichi exchanges words with Australia's representative on energy security and semiconductor cooperation. Every handshake is measured, every conversation logged by diplomatic cameras. A PEC may not produce binding treaties, but its real power lies in these side discussions, the subtle, incremental shaping of consensus. The tone of the day remains cautiously optimistic. President Lee's emphasis on cooperation seems to have softened even the most hardened negotiators. Observers describe the atmosphere as purposeful, with delegates eager to show alignment without overpromising. The Korean hosts manage the proceedings with precision, blending the nation's famed hospitality with diplomatic finesse. Between sessions, traditional Korean music plays lightly in the foyer, while delegates sample local cuisine, a reminder that even amid global complexity, human connection still matters. As evening approaches, the summit transitions to closed-door sessions focusing on AI ethics and digital trade. Insiders report a candid debate between the US, China, and Japan on data localization and algorithm transparency. Xi's aides stress the principle of technological sovereignty, while Washington's delegation pushes for open standards to prevent monopolization. Japan mediates, advocating a hybrid model, rules that protect innovation without restricting cross-border data flows. The discussions are tense but constructive, reflecting the stakes of a digital economy now worth over $60 trillion globally. In the press corridor, reporters trade notes. Questions swirl. Will APEC issue a joint declaration on AI? Can the bloc reaffirm its commitment to free trade amid growing protectionism? Behind these technical issues lies a larger story, a region seeking to define its identity in an age of fragmentation. Europe wrestles with its energy crisis, the US grapples with domestic polarization, and Asia-Pacific, home to 60% of the world's population, stands at a crossroads. Night falls on Gyeongju's historic skyline. Lanterns illuminate the pathways around the summit complex. The day's events have ended, but the significance lingers. The images of world leaders Lee, Xi, Takaichi, Carney, Besant, captured against Korea's ancient backdrop, tell a story of continuity and adaptation. APEC 2025, observers say, may not deliver sweeping reforms, but it reaffirms something fundamental, that in an uncertain world, dialogue remains the last bridge standing. In a late evening press briefing, South Korea's presidential office summarizes the day's outcome. Officials emphasize progress on AI cooperation, agreement on climate finance frameworks, and a renewed push for transparent digital supply chains, One official calls it a modest but meaningful step, a phrase that perfectly captures the spirit of this summit. The challenge now is turning these pledges into action before the next gathering in Lima. As journalists file their reports, footage of Lee Jae Myung's address continues to circulate online. The soundbite most replayed is the one where he warns that the technological revolution presents both an unprecedented crisis and an unprecedented opportunity. It's clipped, shared, analysed, but its meaning is universal. Every nation here, from powerhouse to island economy, faces the same crossroads: adapt together or risk being left behind. The closing images show leaders departing the venue, security convoys pulling into the dimly lit streets of Gyeongju. The summit banners ripple in the cool autumn breeze. For a few fleeting hours, diplomacy has replaced rivalry and conversation has bridged divides that policy alone cannot. As the world watches, the message from Gyeongju is clear. The path ahead may be uncertain, but cooperation, fragile as it is, remains humanity's best compass towards stability.